Let's take a look at one of the main user interface elements of Davinci Resolve that needs some attention. You'll be using it a lot if you do much editing in Resolve. So here in Resolve, I have a project I use for another one of the tutorials. And there's a couple of different ways the interface can be set up. So here we have the traditional preview window, program window view. Over here is the preview. This is you're looking at different bits of footage that you might bring into the project. And here you have the window that is the timeline. So this is the project that you're assembling, putting together. If I select a clip that is in the timeline so that it's highlighted in red, and I hit the inspector tab, the inspector brings up a great deal more controls for what you can do with that clip in the timeline. So for example here, transform, which I use a lot, you can hover over the value for zoom X or zoom Y. Because they're linked right here, it will zoom both X and Y coordinates. So you can just click and drag to zoom in or out on a clip. If for some reason you want to stretch it, you can unlink it and stretch sideways, up and down to your heart's content. If you don't like what you've just done, this arrow will undo the changes and reset that value completely. So let's set it back to normal, and it even relinked it for us. Let's say we've made some changes here. We've changed the angle, the pitch, the yaw. We've done all kind of crazy things. We want to reset all of that. This uh, icon here will reset the entire section of transform, like that. Let's do some more crazy stuff as well. You can also turn off the transform and turn it back on. And if you want to compare quickly between your original version and the changes you've made, it's pretty cool. So let's look at stabilization. We've used this before as well. Let's go ahead and select a different one. Now here we have a problem. Because I've selected this clip, we are looking at the information for that clip in the inspector over here. And we're looking in the program view here. That is actually showing us where the playhead is. So we're looking at a different clip than we have selected. So if I select this clip and I start making changes in the transform, nothing happens. Well, that's not entirely true. Something is absolutely happening. It's just happening on the other clip that we're not looking at. So make sure you're looking at the same clip in both the program view by having the playhead over it and selecting it to have it in the inspector. It happens a lot, but fortunately undo will undo the most recent changes. So if you notice that you're making a change in the inspector and nothing is happening in the clip, just undo it and make sure you're looking at the right clip. You can also use the inspector on your preview stuff. You first have to deselect anything in the timeline. Now the inspector is empty. Let's bring up this clip, for example, and we'll take a part of the clip of the village here, and wrong one. We'll take that clip. I actually want to zoom in on that clip on the village, and that should do it. Now if I bring that down into the timeline, you'll see that those changes persist. Now in the timeline, we can also use the inspector to do animation. So here at the beginning of the clip, I am going to add a keyframe, which says at this point in the frame, those values will be frozen. Then we go to the end of the clip, for example, and I'm going to now change these values. I'm going to move this over to keep the village somewhat centered. And now the program will calculate the difference between the keyframes to sort of keep the village in the center of the shot. These diamonds put keyframes in, so the value in the inspector is saved at those times, and it'll calculate the differences in between and change it. If you are looking at something in the preview window, you'll notice that those diamonds aren't there. You can't animate something until you put it into the timeline. So let's see what else the inspector does. We can also stabilize if we need. We've looked at that before. Composite is different ways of blending the two layers that are one over the other. So let's take the second shot here. And we'll take a small part of it and we'll put it over this shot here. Now, if I go into composite and I turn this into, let's say, difference. Well, that's kind of like a 70s music video, isn't it? What it's doing is it's using the difference in values between the two layers to decide what it's going to show you. These different composite modes are how the different layers are to interact with each other. So uh, normal, for example, is you're not changing the layers at all. But if you turn the opacity of the top layer down, you can see the other layer under it. This is a real common effect where you're kind of seeing two things at the same time. So that's composite. We'll go ahead and get rid of that. Disable this one for the moment. Lens correction. If your lens is warped in some way, the program can detect that and compensate for it. So if you're using a super wide angle lens and it's kind of fisheye looking, the program can compensate for that. You can scale up, scale down. Oh, speed change is fun. You can change the speed of a clip. Oh, again, here, I was just looking at the wrong one. Happens a lot. So I'm going to look at the right one here. We'll change the speed to 50%, assuming that I shot this in 60 the way I normally do. That'll give us a smooth 30 frames per second, and it will retime it to move smoothly. And because it's now moving at 30 frames per second, I can actually spread that out a bit and get more of the village in the shot because it's moving slower. Retime and scaling offers a variety of settings for how it's going to scale and retime things. So if you're shot at 30 frames per second and you want to stretch it out to half speed, it'll be playing at 15 frames per second basically, and it'll look a little bit choppy. Well, the program can make up frames. It can generate frames in between the frames that you've actually shot. And it's not too bad. It's pretty hard on your processor, and it takes some time to do, but depending on the shot, it can do it. Cropping is, let's say, oh, we use this one a lot actually. So let's put our landscape back. And if, let's say, you want to have something in the shot over here beside your speaker, you would use cropping, potentially, to make the image that you've got smaller if you only need a part of it, like that. And transform to move it off to the side or someplace else where it's not going to be in the way. Now this is way too big, so we can also make it smaller, move it further off to the side. And that's how you get picture in a picture, by using by layering one image over the other and using the controls in the transform controls in the inspector to change the size and put it where you want on the screen. The inspector is super handy, and it's used for just about everything. So even in the Fairlight page, there is an inspector. If you select a clip so that it's highlighted, hit the inspector, you have more audio options. Now, in the edit page, you also have audio options. You have tabs in the inspector where you can access more of the options. And for the most part, the inspector options are the same, or at least similar, depending on which page you're looking at. Go to the cut page, for example. Again, you can select the clip, hit the inspector, and have video options and audio options. So the inspector is a really useful part of the UI in Davinci Resolve. It took me a minute or two to get used to, I'll have to admit, when I switched from Premiere. Premiere has similar things, but they kind of split it up in different places. And I had to get used to, like, okay, I got to turn the inspector on or off. In Premiere, they were just kind of always there. But in Resolve, there it is, the inspector, and the different ways of interacting with the different aspects of your footage. Give it a try, play around with it. Seriously, it'll be worth the time invested. Thanks for coming along. We'll catch you next time.